Hello and welcome to Two Therapists and a Microphone. I am Dr. Harrison Davis.
And I'm Dr. Aisha Dickerson.
Two Therapists and a Microphone is a show about mental health, relationships, and social issues that personally affect you. We broadcast live every Thursday evening at 7:30 p.m. on the Our Black Media Network.
We are two licensed psychotherapists with decades of clinical experience, and we want to hear from you. We want to hear about the situations or dilemmas that you're going through. Send us your questions by visiting our webpage at www.twotherapist.com and click on Ask Two Therapists at the top of the page.
Thank you so much. So, today we're going to talk about an important topic. I think they're all important, but today we're going to focus on our teachers and our educators, as I have come to realize many of them are still struggling. I know a few educators, and I have a couple on my clientele in my practice. And here we are. I remind people like every week, we're 2 years,
All right. Is it
two,
two? Sometimes we
two
say three.
2 years
Mhm.
into the pandemic. And I and Aisha and I, we're professors and we have private practices. And I remember I was still in the classroom, back in March 2020, and getting that text, in front of the students. Everybody got the same text from the university saying that we were immediately shutting down and closing for 2 weeks. And we're going to start back up after spring break remotely. And I
Eh,
remember everybody was confused. I didn't know what to do. I thought it was a hoax,
mhm.
and but after that, the world changed, particularly with me and my job. Do you remember that, Aisha?
I do, but because I was working remotely, so I was already at home, and the message that I got was more about my kids being in school. They were out for spring break, and we got the message telling us basically don't send them back after spring break. And especially working remotely, the big thing was they were at home burning up all the internet.
Yep.
I
People
was
buying
mad at
groceries.
Xfinity giving out internet for free while I was paying $200 a month, and then mine was slowing down. I mean, it's everything was going just
Yeah, I think a
flat out.
lot of us learned at that time when our kids were trying to learn remotely that there's limitations to the internet through Xfinity. I
Right.
never knew that.
Me
And then you
either.
got to pay when you go over the data. So
Hmm.
we were frustrated, some of us as parents, and trying to make some adjustments and explain things to our kids. Well, the teachers, K through 12 in particular, and a few college professors, they were still struggling. They still are today. Here
Hmm.
we are 2 years later, dealing with mask mandates and whether or not we have it or not. Some of them have caught COVID. Some of their spouses have caught COVID. Some of them are afraid of the kids. A number of teachers, I think I heard the last report, 50% the teachers left the teaching field. I just did some research. We have 390,000 fewer K through 12 teachers today
Oh, I didn't know that.
than we did before the pandemic. That's nationwide, of course. And many of these teachers are having some tough times coping with things and thinking about what they're going to do. They were labeled essential workers, and
Hmm.
so they could not leave. I remember my daughter's teachers, they didn't know how to look, they didn't know how to use Zoom. They didn't know how to use Microsoft Teams. I mean, it was a mess, and we dealt with it. But the
Hmm.
teachers are still trying to figure out what they're going to do.
Well, and then there's always kind of this like spectrum. You have the teachers who don't really know what they're doing, and they're trying to teach the
Yep.
old school way from a Zoom. And then you have the other teachers who are doing too much on the internet. Like the students barely saw their faces. They had them doing Quizlets here and Quizlets there and watching videos. And I'm like, are you? Some teachers were really just chilling at home,
They
putting the
were.
stuff in the internet, and then they were happy for the kids to be home because they were home. And then, you got when we come back into the schools and you have the teachers who are afraid of the students. And then you have
Yep.
these teachers who are just like, I don't want to wear a mask. So,
Yep.
it turned into a political thing. Harrison, what I remember is when you went back to work, I have that picture actually on our Instagram page, 2TM Show on Instagram for anyone who wants to see it. What Harrison looked like his first day back at work.
Yep. I had on the plexiglass mask. the paper mask, and I had hand
Hand
sanitizer
sanitizer.
in my
Everybody
hand
came in hand sanitizer.
because we were told that summer 2020 to go back and
Mhm.
teach, but we were required to wear a mask. And at that time, that was before vaccinations, and I didn't know
Mhm,
what to expect. I'm still looking at the daily count on news, who was
mhm.
dying, who had it, and the numbers were high. So I certainly did not want to do it, but I tried to make light of it, to ease everybody's mind. But the fact is, teachers are still overwhelmed. A lot of them are
Mhm.
concerned. A lot of them are burnt out. A lot of them have left the teaching field, and a lot of principals and systems are scrambling to hire qualified teachers.
Mhm.
So, Dr. Aisha brought on a guest today.
I did. So for the first time ever, I think we've had 2 weeks in a row people with who are school counselors or have school counseling backgrounds. Because last week we were talking about bullying and what children were dealing with in the school system, and today we have another school teacher, Toshiba Maxey. Sorry, not school teacher, school counselor,
Yep.
Toshiba Maxey. Because as we all know, our school counselors don't just work with the children. They're there for the mental health needs of basically anyone in the building, from
The
what I can
staff.
see when
Absolutely.
I've been there.
Mhm.
So Toshiba Maxey has three great loves in her life: her son Christopher Harris, working with children in creative arts. At an early age, she combined her love for working with children and her passion for creative arts. She attended and graduated from Albany State University with a
Oh,
bachelor's of science in
The
psychology.
Rams.
Shortly thereafter, she became a member of the Albany alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Inc. and
mhm.
completed two master's degrees, the first in public administration and the second in education. So she served as a professional counselor in the public school sector for over 16 years, working with middle and high school students. In her past time, she has managed Dance 2.0 Ltd, a dance organization for creatives, for 16 years, formerly known as Uptown Dance Studio. I hope
All
that's I
right.
said that correctly. So
Mhm.
she
Yeah.
managing Uptown Dance Studio and teaches different types of dance to children in the evening. Thank you, Toshiba, for being here with us tonight. I love that you have so many different experiences in your background, and I bet that it helps you with working in the school system. So, we said you've worked with
Absolutely.
children. You worked with children in the school systems for over 16 years, but tell me, what are you seeing with the educators in these school systems?
Yeah, well, like you said, the role as a school counselor, as an educator, we not only supported the students, but we had to support their parents, the administrators. We're that person in the building, and that wears all the hats. And I think we were talking about it a little earlier when I got the news, and we all kind of thought, well, 2 weeks, everything will be back to normal. But we
Hmm.
realized very soon that we were transitioning into some
A
interesting
new
times,
era.
a whole
Right.
new normal, right?
No, we were thinking it was going to disappear after 2 weeks. Like, you
Yep.
get over the flu in a
Yep.
week and have a little residual cough. This just not what happened.
Yes, I know that first 2 weeks, I was like, oh, I get to be at home, and I think everybody was kind of having that moment, like, oh, I get some free time. I can
I get
read,
to
I can,
cook.
I can work from my pajamas from the bottom half, and professional from the top, and just really be at home. But I think reality soon set in, and people realize this is not what I anticipated. Educators had to start juggling home. Some of those things that
Hmm.
you deal with when you get off work. Well, now you got to deal with it while you're at work. And then on top of that, some of those challenges that that come with being an educator, being in the schools. Before COVID, there were mental health issues, but
Hmm.
now you those things are really coming to the surface, and some of those that may not have been an issue before, they definitely became an issue at now, and it's still at this present time, we're still dealing with a lot of those challenges.
How do you see some of the teachers coping with these challenges that you just mentioned in the classroom? A thing that I'm hearing quite a bit is that a lot of the teachers are trying to give from an empty cup, is the
And
term.
my
Yeah.
high schooler tells me that, so sometimes the children have said that the teachers are in there drinking. She said, like, you know, in high school, they know what alcohol is like. She's like, the teacher was drinking again today.
Yeah, the students see it. The first week of class for my daughter in middle school, she came back and told me one of her teachers, she doesn't want to be a teacher anymore. She just sits there and let us talk. And I said, "What do you mean, Chloe? That doesn't make any sense." Sure enough, 2 weeks later, we got the notice that teacher had resigned, and they had to
Oh,
hire
wow.
another teacher. But what are you
Mhm.
seeing, Maxie, within the
Well,
classroom?
I get the opportunity to support like multiple middle and high schools, and one of the things that just was common across the board was, of course, at the state level, at the district level, we were required to put a lot of strategies and interventions in place for the students, and the big thing was students, resources for the parents. But then I think we were kind of we kind of put we did things a little bit backwards, and of course we had training, we went through things, but it was one of those things, everything was in a hurry. We had to hurry up and get trained on how to social emotional learning was really big during that time, and it still is now, but the primary focus was on the people that we serve, and a lot of adults were burning out, at
Yeah.
any given time. Typically you see teams, just say the middle school level, you have a whole eighth grade, you have two teams that may consist of about 8 teachers on one team, 8 on the other. One outbreak, the whole eighth grade team wiped out. So
Yes, that's the
schools,
thing.
yeah,
One, you know, who's
in
ground
two
zero?
days, in
Yeah.
2 days, and they had to shut the school down because we were
Mhm.
trying to. I remember transitioning into the Christmas break. Of course, the goal was, of course, they had it where we could get tested. By then, students and teachers were able to get vaccinations, but we couldn't. A lot of schools were closing because we couldn't get to the break. We were just trying to maintain all the schools and
Yeah.
keep all the schools open. But it was, when I say, administrators, a whole administration team, so what do that's huge, because you never see that where your whole administration team is out, you know and then or a whole eighth grade team is out. So that was, I mean, you from one day to the next, nobody knew what to expect, so you were always kind of operating in a kind of panic or a chaotic mode. Well,
Hmm.
especially on the support side. But then, of course, you had some where, like, it kind of got to a point of despair and, like, well, I don't know. Some started giving up. And that's when you started seeing a lot of those mental health things start coming to surface, just from what I experienced.
So when you say that some of them started giving up, what does giving up look like? Like, what were they doing that came across as just giving up? Besides
You,
quitting, because we
we,
know a lot of them just quit.
yeah, well, I definitely, well, I think, Dr. Davis mentioned earlier, you, he's, and those statistics or research shows that, 50% of educators were thinking about, leaving the field. So just in observing the culture and the norm and just day-to-day conversation, people are starting to shift because there are a lot of additional responsibilities came as a result of COVID. Like I think
Yeah.
you said, with technology, that was a challenge. And then even some of those kids that you may have had, at-risk students that you had issues with before COVID, now you got to try to manage that and still be held accountable, and make sure that they graduate or they're promoted, and all the pressure of that. You just start seeing people not only just showing signs of frustration,
Yeah.
anxiety, anger,
Yeah.
and then you just start seeing people check out. Like, look, this is too much. Some will ask for help, and then some will just be content. But when you get to that point, you're not helping yourself or anybody else, or especially our students.
Yeah, I can remember one of my clients. She was a longtime teacher for like 19 years, and into the pandemic, that following fall of 2000, I think that's when everything hit her. She was still afraid. You mentioned anxiety and worrying about
Hmm.
herself, her parents who lived in another state,
Hmm.
and it also highlighted some marital issues that she
Mm,
was dealing with. And I remember she told me that she wasn't doing what she loved to do because she's sitting in front of a computer. I think a lot of us are about zoomed out these days, but she entered the teaching field
Yeah.
so that she can stand up in front of her class and connect and engage students and help them to learn. And it's like that piece was taken away from her. So for her, she checked out by not engaging the students. She did not grade their papers. She became depressed. very easily irritable, and the principal would call her out on it, and she actually had to go on disability because her depression got so bad for her. And I remember, and medication as well. And I remember she was telling me that all her teacher friends in the school were like that. So I cannot imagine what a lot of them were going through. But administrators were out, the kids were half on the class Zoom call,
Right.
go,
The ones when they took tests, they were cheating. I
playing
don't
music.
know if the kids learned half the stuff they were supposed to
I walked
learn.
in on my daughter one time right here in my study in the office, and this is where she was sitting, and she was asleep during class, sitting in
Look,
this
look,
chair.
kids will be kids now. That's the thing.
But what
Right.
message did that all send the teachers? That's what how were teachers interpreting and coping with all of that? That's how one of my clients dealt with it. She shut down. She could not deal. It was the enormity of everything, including trying to teach in a way that she had never thought about.
Yeah, it definitely was an adjustment. It was an adjustment for everybody. We had to do a whole lot of things really quick. A lot of things were implemented. That a lot of teachers, counselors, administrators weren't very familiar with. But yeah, I think where we started, where we are now, we've made a lot of progress, and there are a lot
Good,
of supports in place. You
good.
see districts hiring more support staff.
Mm,
You see districts offering more opportunities for employee assistance program. Before, okay, we knew it was there, but now they're a little bit more intentional with saying, hey, you need to make sure that you take advantage of that. And for those that are kind of weathering the storm,
yep.
we're seeing that, and they're relying on those outside pastimes to really get by. Because honestly, those things may be in place where you can take advantage of them, during the day or in a school system, or you could do virtually. But how much time do they really have if they're really working with the students and the parents? So um, I think it really, uh, those that have weathered the storm are really taking time to really introspectively just do what they had to do to survive. Everybody just got in survival mode. Now we can't stay in survival mode forever, but
Hmm.
that's what happened.
Speaking of survival mode, so I have a client that's a teacher, and she was actually kind of the opposite of your client, Harrison, where she was doing the most all the time. And it seemed to me that it was kind of affecting her health. And
Oh,
listen,
she
she
became teacher superhero.
yes, she did. She was calling everyone, making sure everyone was okay. She was teaching her stuff. She was teaching other people's stuff. She was coaching 3 sports.
Oh
She,
wow.
for the
Overdrive.
well, 100%. And the thing about it was she teaches special education, which I don't know
Oh
how you right. You see how everybody say "oh" at the same time. I don't.
yeah,
How
yeah.
do you do special education over Zoom? And I mean,
Mm,
I'll say from what I hear, she did a good job, but also
mhm,
that I know from being her therapist that leads to or it led to a ton of anxiety,
mhm.
because it's not just I have to take care of me, I have to take care of all of my children and all of my special children who are commonly tossed to the side by other people just because they have special education needs.
Mhm.
So how are you seeing any of that where teachers seem to be doing the opposite rather than
Shutting down.
yeah, shutting down?
I can definitely say that you definitely have, and you may often hear people refer to teachers, and educators as, superheroes, but superheroes need support system and help too sometimes. And to that point, just from what I observed with, those students, it got to a point where I think it was across the board. I know at some point they start transitioning in smaller groups, and this is just from what my experience. And because the need was so great for those special education students, they had to allow smaller groups, to actually come in the school where prior to the whole population coming back in the building. So it was a lot, and just hats off to those teachers and educators that have to work with that special population or any special population for that matter that have additional needs that with that virtual layer to it, it adds all kind of challenges to it.
Mhm. And so, in addition to thinking about COVID, what I think about is, have you all, are either of you seen Abbott Elementary
Yep.
on ABC? Let me say, I
Oh,
love that show, right? It's hilarious, but actually, it makes me think about what teachers really go through. My friends who are teachers who always set up the thing at the beginning of school where you can donate to their classrooms. I mean, I always donate.
Yep.
And, just having to deal with not having the rug on the floor or what the kids are eating for lunch, making sure that
mhm,
their hair is done. Because I remember as a child, my mom was an elementary school teacher and eventually a principal. But I remember her having to deal with that kind of stuff. When defects comes, sometimes you're the only person as a teacher that the child has that's steady in their lives if they don't get moved. Or, if you can braid their hair, if you can twist their hair, if you could keep some extra deodorant and lotion and clothes. I mean, it's already, what I'm saying is it's already stressful to be a
Yep.
teacher
yeah,
before
yeah,
COVID.
yeah.
Yeah. That.
That's so. Oh, I'm
No.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, that's so true because I watched the show for the first time last week, and in education, you definitely have to have a sense of humor. And and there are some situations and stories and families that you deal with, and it's sad, and you really have to, okay, what do I do next? And I think Harrison mentioned in the beginning, when all the kids having the cameras off, but I know we were, just having Zoom sessions and things like that, and say, hey, turn your camera on, we want to see you. But then what we were realizing is we had families that were in hotels. You can literally see
Yep.
families in the bed next to them, behind them. So at that point, it was a reality check for us.
Hmm.
Let's not push that, find other ways to connect so that, of course, that's another layer, that teachers and counselors had to work through to be able to have that. But it's you just have to constantly keep reinventing the wheel to make it work for whatever, student population that you're working with.
Yeah, but it's exhausting being in survival mode,
It
And
is.
I want to remind people again, it's been 2 years. But one of my clients, as you guys mentioned, was already stressful and working with some of the kids who don't have a whole lot of the resources. As one of my teachers became a principal during that time period, and the first couple of weeks, elementary school, one of the kids' parents died of
Mm,
COVID.
mhm,
Another kid, a boy, was exposing himself, to the people in the school, and the janitorial staff had all quit because they had COVID or health issues, and then her assistant principal had quit too, and then she was going through a divorce, and then she
Oh,
has to be there to with a smile on her face during the pandemic and help the other teachers to stay on the job. She kept teachers who were not doing an adequate job because she didn't want to replace them. It was just too much of a chore. So I helped her, so we can just transition very quickly into talking about what are some self-care techniques for some of these teachers who are still dealing with that stuff. COVID was just the cherry on top of this issue that many teachers have to go through, and that's dealing with some troubled students from troubling environments. And let's also mention, dealing with some other teachers and administrators who should not be working around kids.
well, yeah, because they're always there too. They're ever present. Yes,
Everywhere,
oh, yeah.
everywhere. So, Maxie, what type of self care techniques can you share with the audience for teachers to deal with some of those realities? And Aisha and I, we've dealt with it too with some of our students on the college level. It's just there's more to it than simply going in teaching a subject and then leaving and go home. There still is a lot of engagement with the environment.
Oh yes, absolutely. Well, there's like different layers to it. My role in the as a counselor, a lot of times, we would provide support to the teachers and the students. Sometimes that may consisted of going into the classrooms, talking about breathing techniques, or if you're feeling, if you're feeling this way, or if you're feeling sad, or if you feel like you need someone to talk to, just giving them those options and letting them know that, hey, um, we're here for you, and these are things that you can self advocate for yourself. And a lot, and what I learned and observed, in just going in and trying to make sure we provided support for the students, the teachers needed that additional support too. So sometimes the additional support staff in the buildings, like your social workers, your behavior intervention specialists, your school psychologists, we were, we had to start creating like our own community to kind of, hey, well, let's do this today. Let's go walk track today, or let's do yoga. Let's do some meditation. And then even, and even some schools you saw where they had rooms where, hey, I just need a timeout. I don't want to talk to you or nobody else. Can I just go in here for a few minutes? And you start seeing, that implemented a lot across the board. So I think, teachers, educators just across the board, they were using all of those tools and resources, but, it was changing so fast, it's just a constant adjustment.
Thank you. So, do you ever experience times where the teachers just come? Because I always tell my adolescent students, when you have an issue, just stop by and talk to a school counselor. Are the educators coming and just sitting on your couch too in your office?
Yes. Look, and even if I'm not in the office, they will find me wherever I may be. Like, hey, absolutely. Sometimes sometimes they want to vent, sometimes they just want to talk, and then of course, as as that support person in the building, we're equipped with all kind of resources, and that's when we get the privilege of referring them to therapists like you guys, so they can get that wraparound service that they need. And even I found myself during the pandemic having to reach out to a licensed therapist, and that was my first time, to be honest, and it opened my eyes to even wanting to transition and start working on my LPC. But I had it was just a lot going on, trying to be the person to provide support, and then watching, things happen that were beyond your control that you couldn't do. And it just got overwhelming, on top of seeing people pass away that I love and care for.
Yep.
And knowing, the people that you support going through the same thing. After a while, your cup is empty. It's just empty.
That's the term that I heard a lot. So you mentioned meditation. I cannot emphasize that more. There was a time, believe it or not, I wasn't a big proponent of meditation. But I think over the last 6-7 years, I do it a hell of a lot. And I have to teach people
Count to 10.
how that's one way to do it, whatever you got to do. And you also talked about some of the educators using the counselor as an outlet. Having someone to go to instead of just keeping things in to themselves. But also the other issue I think would be very helpful is minding your boundaries, because the teachers have to do a lot.
Look, that's what my therapist told me in my session. I had to create some healthy boundaries and own that. And when I say it changed my whole perspective, and it made a big difference. Huge difference.
That principal client of mine, I mean, she was driving kids home. She was going up there on a Saturday. She was staying late to 9 o'clock. She had empty positions that she had to interview for and fill. And so it was like she was always working, and then had these other personal things. Yeah. So we had to talk about boundaries. And I know a lot of teachers and educators, they we don't have 9 to 5 working hours. And so it's easy. Teachers want to be helpful. And they forget about those boundaries, and they do things for other folks, like your superhero teacher that you had, Aisha.
She been at school from like 6 something in the morning till after the sun went down, coaching sports. She played coaching sports. She's never played coaching sports. They couldn't find other coaches for. So she did that year round. And now I wonder, Harris. Well, no, I guess because your principal client hasn't quit. My youngest child's elementary school principal, we would always, because we passed a car on the way out the neighborhood, would always see her car there in the evenings and on the weekends. And then the middle of the school year, she just quit. In the middle of the school year, it was like, well, she retired.
Well, she quit. She took advantage of that. That's what she did.
Happy retirement, Miss. I won't say her name. We were like, in the middle of the school year.
Yeah, you know what? We've seen a good bit of that too. Where people are retiring, they go ahead and taking their time and they're leaving.
Yeah, but it's a lot that they have to do. So those are just some of the tips that we have for you guys. Toshiba Maxey, thank you for coming on and telling us about life of educators, what's going on, what they're dealing with, how they can better cope with things. You provided us with some strategies to share with some of the educators out there, because it is tough. I actually feel sorry for some of my daughter's teachers. When I talk to them, I'm like, you got a lot going on, and then you got to go home to deal with your family.
Or when,
You know.
or when I come to the school and see how other kids, my kids are fine in my mind, but how other folks' kids act. I'm like,
Yep.
I know I
Yeah.
couldn't do it.
I couldn't do it either. I would be on medication or in jail.
Like I said all the time, teachers need to be paid more. Educators just
I
in general
agree.
need to
Well,
be
I
paid more.
definitely
agree.
appreciate teachers, and so
Yeah.
for any educators who are listening, thank you for all that you do, especially to my kids, teachers and school counselors. Thank you for
Absolutely.
and the clients I work with. Thank you all for working with them.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Hopefully I've been helpful and
You have,
know,
but do you
yeah.
have any final words that you want to share with the audience, Maxie?
It's okay to get counseling. If you need it, reach out to whatever that support system is. If you don't get it from one person, just keep reaching out. But, your child's school, there's a plethora of resources and don't let money be an issue for you. There are programs that will pay for that. So take advantage of it. It's okay. It's okay. It works.
Absolutely. Dr. Aisha, you have any final words on this you want to share?
Just well, I had one more quick question. Ty, if you had to throw out a diagnosis that is most common in all the educators you see, what would it be?
Well, look, all of us are a little crazy, not licensed, diagnosed
You
as
know,
little
because I
look
feel
at
like
your
I
book
could
crazy.
diagnose everyone with something. What would you say is the most common diagnosis?
Definitely, I see a lot of anxiety.
Okay. That's what I was thinking too. So I just want to hop on with what Toshiba said.
Mhm.
Don't be afraid to get counseling. One thing I do know about our school teachers is that most of them have pretty good state insurance.
They do.
And so
Yeah.
take
And retirement
advantage of your
plans.
Look,
take
EAP.
advantage of your right. Take
You get
advantage
8
of your
complimentary sessions.
benefits.
Yeah, EAP, that's Employee Assistance Program. I am one of the clinicians. But what I would love to just say, God bless the teachers. I mean, you guys are saints. I see what you do. I see how you're struggling. I know not everybody could weather the storm, using your term, Maxie, but the ones who are out there, they're still passionate about what they do. They can certainly
Absolutely.
use some more resources and get paid more. That are out there. So I just want to thank the teachers that are out there, and even the ones who are struggling. The ones when I came into my daughter's Zoom class, the teacher's camera was off. And I asked Chloe, what are you supposed to be doing? She said, I don't know. The teacher didn't
Sometimes
tell
they need
us.
to stay off.
Even for you. Bless you for at least coming on. But that's
Right.
it. That's it for today's show. I want to thank you guys for watching Two Therapists and a Microphone. We've been talking to Toshiba Maxie about mental health and educators, and thank you for providing a lot of the good information that we have. Anything you want to close out with today, Aisha?
Well, before we close out, I want Toshiba to let our listeners know where they can find you if they want to get in contact with you in the future.
Thank you. Yes, I'm actually on Instagram and Facebook at Coffee with Counselor Maxie. So check me out. Yeah.
Thank you.
DM me. I'm here to support.
And you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at 2 TM Show. And on Facebook, just search for Two Therapists and a Microphone.
All right, guys. We will see you next Thursday at 7:30 p.m.
All right.
Like this.